Hi, I'm Will Townsend, the Vice President and Principal Analyst for Networking and Security at Moor Insights and Strategy. Joining me today for a Moor Insights and Strategy Market Spotlight conversation is Raj Yavatkar. Hope I pronounced that right, Raj. You're the CTO of Juniper Networks. It's great to see you.
Same here. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about Beyond Labs. And so you launched this initiative in May. I was pre-briefed on it. There are a lot of infrastructure companies and even service providers that do proof of concept labs, but I was really struck by your approach. It's very unique, focusing on pioneering research, pathfinding projects, and experimental technology developments. And so recently you've narrowed that focus into sort of four key categories. So it's been about 6 months since you've launched Beyond Labs, Raj, and I'm wondering, how's it going?
I think it's going great. I think customer feedback, especially as we expose customers to our partnerships, our approach to looking at pathfinding and innovation through our EBCs and other presentations has been very positive. And we have also been able to focus on certain areas like you said, artificial intelligence and machine learning, sustainability, quantum security, technologies like liquid cooling and so on. So all of those pieces are now beginning to come together, which is really happy to see that.
Well, let's jump into it. And so there's a lot of excitement around AI with generative AI. I mean, everyone is talking about it. There's sort of a whitewashing going on there, but it is exciting because it's going to open up new opportunities. And certainly AI is nothing new. It's been around for quite some time, but I'd love to get your take on the lab's focus on AI.
Yeah, so for us at Juniper, AI is not new, right? About 4 years back for the Wi-Fi networks, we are the first in the industry to introduce what is known as cloud-managed AI ops solution, where you apply artificial intelligence and machine learning for day zero, day one, day two operations of the network in a way that we define what we call service level expectations for our users or endpoints. And we measure the network behavior constantly by collecting telemetry and match it against the expectations to find any issues and proactively resolve them. And we have some customers like Fortune 1 company, largest courier in the world, also publicly stating that the 90% of their troubleshooting tickets get self-resolved by AI. Now we're expanding that concept to the rest of the network by what we call end-to-end assurance. Go from Wi-Fi, campus branch switching, SD-WAN, access, data center network, even core network, apply the same principles for applying artificial intelligence-based ops to automate the network operations. So that's going really well, right?
That's great. And you mentioned assurance, and that's where really AI has shined, when you talk about AI ops and that sort of thing. And, for our viewers that are not familiar with the concept of AI ops, it's infusing artificial intelligence into the network to improve visibility, to interpret telemetry and that sort of thing.
Right.
But Raj, I'm curious, so specifically to networking, where do you see the applications for generative AI? Because I think, there isn't a lot of discussion when you sort of, double click into networking, from my perspective at least.
So there are two main areas where I see generative AI being applied, and we are beginning to do that. One is the products themselves. So if you look at the networks today, they are operated by network engineers using CLI, command line interface, or some kind of a GUI. And that's a very primitive way to interact with networks. So for example, if you are working with an MPLS network, you may have a 150-page document to consume to understand how to configure and operate such a network. But if you can train the large language model using these documents, it starts giving you answers. So for example, we call it Ask Junos. Junos is our operating system. Ask Junos is the plugin to ChatGPT, which will allow you to ask any questions in a plain English or other language, such as, oh, I want to configure EVPN on this switch or on this part of the network. And it automatically generates the necessary scripts, necessary commands, and executes them. So that's number one. How do we make the products more usable, more customer-friendly using generative AI? Secondly, customer support. If you look at the customer support today, it's structured by L1, L2, L3. L1 support is really the people who understand the network documents a little bit at a shallow level. They are able to answer customers' questions, ask them to reboot the device or something like that. But now imagine that using generative AI, if we can take all the product documentation, customer facing, as well as logs, and use that to train the large language model, it can start providing automated L1 support. That's a pretty powerful idea. So we are pursuing that also.
I love the latter, kind of use case, because that's going to drive a better customer experience. It's going to resolve issues much more quickly, and I think it's going to be very, very compelling. And then just, taking generative AI and sort of simplifying the complexity that's typically involved with managing networks. I mean, networks are becoming very complex. You have enterprise Wi-Fi networks, you have wired networks, you now have private wireless networks,
That's
and
right.
all of this complexity creates overlays. And so to provide a generative AI interface, you don't necessarily have to train, network operators to the nth degree, and you're able to enable, I think, just a smoother, facilitation of network management. And there's
That's
this
right.
trend towards lighter IT, especially in smaller and mid-market size companies, but even some of the larger enterprises are going light IT, correct?
That's right. I think absolutely. I think there's a huge opportunity to change the way people think of network operations, right? We're already applying AI ops, but generative AI takes us to the next level. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and I think there's more to come. I think with any new technology, or again, AI is not new, but the notion of generative AI is relatively nascent and new. Um, there are use cases that I think we're not even thinking about right now, and I think um, initiatives like Beyond Labs is going to help birth those new use cases. So it's very exciting. But with that, let's move to sustainability, and this is another hot topic. I mean, every company has a net zero goal by 10 or 15 years from now, and it's just good to reduce carbon emissions, because that's a huge challenge globally, and it's certainly in places like Europe that I don't want to call it an energy crisis, but certainly with the current geopolitical environment and the fact that Russian oil is not flowing anywhere, basically around the world. They're really having to struggle with conserving energy. And so again, sustainability is really huge. Green IT is really huge. And I'm just wondering, how is Juniper sort of approaching the sustainability challenge? And what can we see, I mean, from the networking perspective, but just, even more broadly speaking?
So for us, in Juniper Beyond Labs, sustainability is one of the most important initiatives because we want to be good corporate citizens. Climate action is real. We are trying to address that. But to your point, sustainability is more than energy efficiency, right? It has to be applied to all the aspects of product development, delivery that we do. So what we are trying to do now is that we are looking at our supply chain and see how we can improve the energy efficiency in the supply chain with respect to how the products are manufactured, assembled, packaged. We can change the packaging to be more sustainable. We can look at the packaging to see what parts of packaging are not necessary, for example. The same thing we can take it to the next level with respect to energy efficiency of network operations. If you look at the networks being operated, utilization of the network varies tremendously during the day and time of in the night also. So if you can collect the time series data on network utilization in the core of the network where we have large chassis-based routers, which have lots of line cards, redundancy built in, inside fabric, which connects these line cards. Now using the time series data and artificial intelligence, we can predict what the throughput is going to be, what the utilization is going to be, and we can turn off parts of the switch, parts of the router, parts of the line cards, parts of the fabric. That can save lots of energy. The other is cooling. We are partnering with external companies which are innovating in the area of liquid cooling or immersion cooling, and applying that to see how can we make the products more sustainable, more energy efficient.
There's a lot of talk around observability these days, right? Network observability, data observability, and having deeper granular levels into network performance like you're describing can allow you to do a lot of the things that you're doing as well. I think we're beginning to see sort of a lot of the fruits that are coming out of this research. And even this week I'm spending time virtually with AWS reInvent, and they open one of their sessions talking about observability. So I think that is really key, at least from my perspective, in achieving sustainability. But I want to move to the third focus for the lab, and this is something that I love to talk about: 5G. I do a weekly podcast, the GTO on 5G. We should actually have you on one of these days, Raj. But I'd like to talk about that. Certainly, Juniper has been a leader with respect to RAN intelligent controller. But I'm wondering what other investigations is the Beyond Labs team focused on that's really going to drive the innovation, beyond just, the speeds and feeds of low latency and fast throughput.
Yeah, so the Beyond Labs really is trying to make sure that if you look at the ORAN as an industry initiative, it's a strategic inflection point. It's going to take some time and effort to make it happen because the traditional vendors are not going to support that, disaggregating the entire network. So Beyond Labs, what we're doing is we are developing partnerships to develop a strong ecosystem of people or companies that provide different parts, such as XApps, RApps, which can optimize the network independent of who's providing the radios. So RIC is a platform, acts like an operating system. On top of that, you can build applications now using machine learning for optimizing spectrum, optimizing energy efficiency, or even optimizing the network operations across multiple cell sites. So that's something that we are taking very seriously and have already developed a partner ecosystem with partners like IRA Technologies, Cohere Technologies, Remedo Labs, which are developing third-party applications, which will run on top of our RIC to do the optimization of the network.
And traditionally, Juniper has been very strong in the service provider community, although I will give you lots of credit. With your Mist acquisition, you've been really building your capabilities within enterprise. But I know from a service provider perspective, from a mobile network operator standpoint, you're working with, companies like Rakuten and Vodafone, right? And I know that I'm a Glomo judge again this year for Mobile World Congress Barcelona. And I know, I believe it was Vodafone that won an award, and I believe they were leveraging some of your capabilities, right?
Yeah. So one of the things, we're very happy to receive the Glomo Award, right? It's an industry recognition to be the top RIC provider. But what we are beginning to see that we are now going from field trials to actual commercial deployment of the RIC. So for example, we are ending this year with some revenue coming from service providers in terms of how we are deploying the RIC. So next year is going to be very important to scale those deployments into commercial environments. Our goal is, and industry's goal is, if you talk to Vodafone and other telcos, they will tell you they expect that 20% of the 5G network to be ORAN based at some point, like 25, 26. Yeah. So we have to work towards that. And that's what we are working towards with respect to, and Beyond Labs playing an important role because we host the RIC platform and its ecosystem. So making this strategic inflection point happen in the industry is a big challenge as well as opportunity.
And I think, one of the challenges I think with Open RAN has just been codifying the standards. And there are a lot of organizations that are involved. I mean, I applaud the work that you're doing with Beyond Labs, but, you have a RAN Alliance, Open RAN Policy Coalition, you had TIP trying to harmonize a lot of that. And then you've had companies like Rakuten with Symphony and SimWorld, and recently NTT with Oryx trying to simplify that entire process. So again, I applaud your effort. It's not a hockey stick adoption from my perspective. I think we'll see deployments in greenfield networks, such as Reliance in India, Rakuten and in Japan, and then Dish. Hopefully, Dish can move forward in the U.S. with their initiatives as well. But earlier, I touched really briefly on private wireless, and this is a huge opportunity from my perspective, especially in operational technology environments where. Right. Densifying with Wi-Fi, and especially in outdoor environments and that sort of thing just doesn't work. And typically in manufacturing environments, there's a lot of metal that creates like Faraday cages. And so I'm wondering, what are you seeing with private wireless? Because I think we've seen good, solid adoption with LTE, but 5G adoption has been somewhat slow to take off.
That's right. So for us, it's not either or, right? It's not Wi-Fi or 5G. We look at this as a very integrated, converged private mobile network. So we are partnering with Celona Networks, for example, to combine our Mist Wi-Fi solution with their private 5G so we can provide an enterprise solution. But we really believe in our vision of boundless private mobile networks, irrespective of whether you're running Wi-Fi or 5G or both, and do really seamless handoffs and so on. And we are working towards that with respect to developing in Beyond Labs itself a new stack which will allow us to do this kind of a boundless private 5G network. So that's something I'm really excited about, and you'll start seeing some demos and actual proof of concepts.
I love that approach because, typically what occurs when you start layering these different networks in is you get overlays, right? And I
That's right.
mentioned earlier the complexity with network overlays and that sort of thing. And it's untenable. And I think the other challenge, cellular has traditionally been a redundancy within the enterprise. It's not been a primary modality. I'm
That's right.
very familiar with Solana and what they're doing. I think they're doing a total solution in a box, so core, RAN, transport. It's very clean, and so it sounds like you're doing some promising things with them to sort of simplify, just kind of bringing that all together, right? Because Raj, I totally agree with you. 5G is not going to kill Wi-Fi. I always like to say that 5G and Wi-Fi are better together, or LT, 5G, and Wi-Fi are all better together. But that's great. Let's move to our fourth topic, and I want to talk about something that might be a little esoteric to a lot of people, and it's quantum secure communications. And I know enough to be dangerous, Raj. So I know about qubits and all of that, but it's something that's been around for quite some time, but it's really, quantum computing and quantum networking is really beginning to gain some steam. In fact, at my firm, Moor Insights and Strategy, we do have an analyst that's focused on quantum, and I learn something new every time I talk to him. But I'd love to hear from your perspective. I mean, because I think there's so much to focus on with quantum communications, and I like the fact that you're focused on secure communications. But would love to hear like what Beyond Labs is doing in that regard.
So I think when you talk about quantum computing, you'll notice that people always say next 5 years. That has been going on for some time. People keep on moving the ball downfield. But really, if you look at the quantum computers and its application to quantum networking, this year we actually saw development of technology which is practical. So we have taken the first step with respect to quantum key distribution. Now, as you know, quantum computing is going to change how cryptography works, because we're going to have something called post-quantum cryptography, because we need completely new coding algorithms which cannot be broken by quantum computers. But quantum key distribution solves a first fundamental problem, which is that how do we prevent man-in-the-middle attack for key distribution, especially symmetric key-based cryptography, but even for asymmetric keys. So what we have done is working with a company called Arkit, and we are also partnering with other companies in Juniper Beyond Labs. We developed for our IPsec product, virtual symmetric key distribution using quantum entanglement. And now that part is actually deployed in 4 or 5 customers. So it's no longer science fiction, it's actually here. And that is the first step towards quantum secure communication. We are also very active in IETF and HC and other organizations to standardize post-quantum cryptography and key distribution so that we can move into that world very quickly. But I'm very happy to say that using quantum, the Beyond Labs work in a quantum key distribution, we have been able to show now that you can do quantum entanglement for key distribution. So in a way, we are making the network more spooky, to quote Albert Einstein, who said, quantum entanglement is a spooky action in distance. Now the network is becoming spooky after all.
I love it. I love it. I wish it was Halloween because it would fit very well with the theme there.
That's right.
I'm wondering, how does silicon come into the picture here? If we could go a little bit off script. I've spent time with Intel. They're doing a lot around confidential computing. There's root of trust. There's secure enclave. So there's a lot of
That's right.
capability in silicon these days. So I'm wondering, how do you see that sort of playing into what you just spoke about?
It's a very good question, right? So I was just at the Intel Channel Advisory Board, where I serve from Juniper point of view, where they presented their roadmap with respect to all the things they are doing for confidential computing, including, a trusted execution environment, secure enclave. Just as a matter of anecdote, I was one of the architects who worked on secure enclave 15 years back. It has taken Intel 10 to 15 years back to get the technology outside. So I think the whole concept of confidential computing and what they're providing is going to be very important, even for a networking company like Juniper, because we use x86 processor for control plane. management, and all our applications run in that. So I think now that the silicon is providing not just a root of trust, but also providing this mechanism by which we can separate out things, has huge implications for cybersecurity, preventing ransomware and so on. So I'm really excited about that. I think we are going to see that applied to networking also.
Well, it's impressive that you were part of that whole initiative, Raj. With Secure Enclave. So, well, I guess that was a great question to ask, huh? So, but it's been a great conversation. I continue to be impressed with what Beyond Labs is doing. I think it's going to drive innovation across the industry. I love the fact that you're working with an ecosystem of partners as well, because you can't do it all on your own, right? I mean, it takes a village, really to build
That's
something
right.
compelling and earth moving. So, but hey, Raj, I want to thank you again for a very insightful conversation.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity and look forward to talking to you again.